During our anniversary celebration at a fancy restaurant, I took a moment to use the restroom when a woman approached me and said, "Don't drink the wine. Your husband put something in it." I thought it was a dumb joke, but I still changed the glasses after 15 minutes. Before we continue, I'd like to know which country you're watching the video from. Enjoy the music as Olga straightened her silk dress, which was the color of the night sky. Today is a special day, the 10th anniversary of their marriage to Igor, a decade that seemed to be full of happiness and well-being. Celebrations, the most expensive restaurant in the city with a panoramic view of the sparkling lights. Igor was as always perfect, in an elegant suit, wearing expensive perfume and smiling charmingly, but something elusive had changed in him recently. It seemed like he was no longer with her, and the restaurant was bustling with voices, cutlery clinking, and unobtrusive music playing. The waiter brought a bottle of their favorite wine, and Igor nodded before deftly using a corkscrew to open it and fill their glasses. Olga smiled back and clinked glasses with Igor as he said, "To us, my love." His voice sounded a little strained, unnatural. The wine was magnificent as usual, but something still made her uneasy, like a thin ice needle piercing her heart. She attributed this to exhaustion and the hectic pace of life, and she had her own consulting firm that required a lot of time and effort. Igor was also a successful businessman who was involved in investments, and they appeared to be the perfect couple, handsome, wealthy, and successful. After a few toasts and various dishes, Olga felt the need to freshen up. "I'm going to the ladies' room," she said, getting up from the table. Igor nodded without looking away from his phone, a gesture that startled Olga because previously he always followed her with his gaze, held her hand, and showed concern. Now, he felt like a stranger in the uncrowded ladies' room, which was decorated with marble and mirrors. Olga washed her face with cool water in an attempt to relax. When she was ready to leave, a stranger appeared out of nowhere. She was dressed simply but elegantly, and she had a look of anxiety in her eyes. "I'm sorry," the woman said quietly, looking around. "I must warn you, be careful with your husband." Olga froze, not understanding what was happening. "What are you talking about?" she asked, feeling a chill run down her back before he poured something in. The woman whispered, "I don't know what it was, but it looked suspicious. Please be careful with these words." The woman hurried out of the ladies' room, leaving Olga in a complete daze. She stood there, stunned, trying to understand what she had heard. What nonsense, that Igor had put something in her wine. But why did she insist so much? Why was there such genuine anxiety in her eyes? Olga went back to the table, feeling as though everything inside was boiling with conflicting emotions, and Igor sat motionless. Igor asked, looking up at her, "Did something happen?" as she was also buried in her phone. "No, everything is fine," Olga replied, trying to sound as calm as possible. She had a slight headache, so she sat down in her seat and tried not to look at Igor. She needed to buy time to figure out what was going on, so she decided to act as though she didn't know anything and see what would happen next. "I think I should drink some more wine," she said, stretching. Igor grinned at his glass, making the wise choice that wine is the best remedy for all ailments. Olga pretended to reach for her glass, but at the last second, without Igor noticing, she switched them, taking his glass and placing hers in front of him. It was dangerous, but she had to make sure the stranger didn't fail, so they spent the rest of the evening discussing trivia. Olga watched Igor closely, trying to catch every detail. He appeared to be totally at ease and content, but there was something in his demeanor. Nevertheless, the tension was releasing, he was examining his watch too frequently, and he was fiddling with his napkin too tensely. Suddenly, Igor went pale, he grabbed his head, and Olga said in terror, "I feel bad." Igor wheezed very bad, and he started to lose consciousness. Olga leaped from her seat and called for assistance, and the waiters hurried up and called an ambulance, which arrived shortly after. The doctors examined Igor and determined that he needed to be hospitalized immediately. "What's wrong with him?" Olga asked the doctor. "Poisoning," the doctor replied, "and take him to the hospital immediately." Olga was shaking uncontrollably. Could Igor really have tried to poison her? She was taken to the hospital with Igor while the doctors fought for his life. Olga sat in the hallway, feeling completely devastated. Her entire world fell apart in an instant. The man she trusted and loved turned out to be a traitor. Later, when Igor was in intensive care, an investigator came up to her and said, "We need to ask you a few questions." Strangely, a stranger warned her about her suspicions regarding Igor's abrupt decline in health. The investigator listened carefully and promised to carry out a thorough investigation at night. As she sat on the hospital couch, she was unable to sleep and her mind raced with ideas about all the times they had spent together, but now they seemed to be phony and feigned. She felt deceived, betrayed, and used. Suddenly, the phone rang, and it was an unknown number. "Hello," Olga answered. "This is Mark," she heard on the receiver. "I'm an ex. I have something to tell you." Igor's partner. Olga froze. Mark, who she had heard of but had never met in person. "What do you want to talk about?" she asked. "About your husband," Mark replied, "and his dark deeds." Olga felt hope coming back to her, thinking that perhaps Mark could help her understand what was going on and discover the truth about Igor. "I'm ready to meet you," she said, adding, "I'll call you tomorrow at noon." Mark said goodbye, and Olga hung up with a sense of resolve growing more. There was silence in the hospital, broken only by the quiet sound of the equipment. Olga sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, clutching the armrests, her head buzzing like a disturbed beehive, and she believed that her life had been built for 10 years. But it turned out to be a lie, and a powerful sedative was found in your husband's blood. The doctor reported a substance that is prohibited for free circulation, and the dosage exceeded. Olga nodded, feeling as though everything inside was turning to stone. She already knew the answer, but she couldn't say it aloud because it felt like an ice knife piercing her very heart. Returning home, she felt out of place because the apartment, which had seemed safe and cozy yesterday, was now full of lies and deceit. The condition has been therapeutic multiple times, but the consequences can be unpredictable. We need to find out how this substance entered the body. Before leaving for the restaurant, she had opened a half-empty bottle of wine for their anniversary. Her throat was dry, but then the phone rang, and it was an unknown Olga. A hoarse male voice called out to her, and it was Mark. They had decided to meet, and Mark's voice brought her back to reality. She remembered that he had offered to tell her the truth about Igor, and she needed that truth more than ever. "Yes, Mark," she said, trying to keep her voice even as she remembered where they could meet. "I'll send you the address, but be careful, Igor," she said. The meeting was set for a small cafe on the outskirts of the city, and Mark, who turned out to be a middle-aged man with a tired face and a piercing gaze, got right to business. "Igor is deeply in debt," he said in a low voice, adding, "I was playing on the stock exchange, went broke. Creditors are breathing down his neck. The only way to pay off, take possession of your property." Olga listened with bated breath, and everything came together to create a terrible picture. He was planning to declare you incompetent. This is a lie. Olga's hands were shaking when she took the pictures. Strange, unfamiliar lines were looking at her, describing her as sick and helpless. Anger and despair were fighting in her soul. How could he, she whispered, feeling how it was approaching. She felt the world around her collapsing, and he wanted to deny her everything: freedom, dignity, and the future. He had fake certificates ready. "Nausea, he thought you wouldn't suspect anything." Mark responded that he is a skilled manipulator and knows how to win her trust. Mark informed her about the shell companies Igor used to launder money and his relationships with questionable people, and he gave her copies of documents to support his claims. "Why are you helping me?" Olga asked, staring at him. Incredulously, "Igor betrayed me." Mark responded, "He stole my business, left me with nothing. I want him to be held accountable for his actions, and I don't want you to be his next." Olga went to a lawyer after meeting with Mark. She told him everything she had learned from Mark and showed him pictures of documents. The lawyer listened intently to her concerns and confirmed that the documents proving you were incompetent had been prepared. He also said that Igor had already begun the process of formally establishing guardianship over you, and that he had every chance of winning the case if you did not act. Olga felt as though she was in a trap set by the person closest to her. She inquired. She felt completely powerless and said, "We need to act quickly." The lawyer responded, We need to gather evidence of his fraud and file a counterclaim, and of course, call the police. At that point, there was a knock on the office door. The lawyer apologized and left, returning a few minutes later with a worried expression. "You have a visitor," he said, adding that she had important information for you. Svetlana entered the office, and Olga recognized her right away, saying, "I know that you didn't tell me right away." "Believed," Svetlana started, "but I had to warn you, because I work as a waitress in that restaurant, and I saw your husband put something in your glass. I'm not sure what it was, but it seemed suspicious to me." Olga looked at Svetlana, not believing what she was hearing, and she asked, "Why did you tell me?" "I couldn't keep silent," Svetlana replied. "I saw how he looked at you. There was no love in his eyes, only calculation. I couldn't allow something to happen to you." Her words to the police were clear proof of Igor's guilt, and Olga felt the strength rising within her. The pain gradually gave way to determination, and she realized that she was no longer a victim but a warrior prepared to fight for her freedom and justice. She would file a police report and divorce Igor, regaining her life. She left the lawyer's office with her head held high, knowing that she would face a difficult battle but willing to do so because she knew that justice would be served and that the truth was on her side. The investigation was underway. Olga packed the rest of her strength into a fist and went to the police station, where she was met by investigator Rogova, a woman with a sharp eye and business sense, in her office, which was cluttered with folders and documents. "Olga Viktorovna, please sit down," Rogova said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming. Your cooperation is important to us." Olga sat down, her knees trembling, trying to remain upright and hide her inner turmoil, and she said in a firm voice, "I'm ready to tell you everything I know." Rogova listened. Rogova interrupted Olga as she was narrating the events of the previous few days, including the anniversary celebration, Mark and Svetlana's revelations, and her suspicions. She explained in detail the exchange of glasses and the subsequent decline in Igor's condition, saying, "We have already seized the medical documents provided by Mark and have begun an investigation of his financial transactions." "Will Igor be arrested?" Olga asked quietly, with a note in her voice. Olga nodded in agreement, understanding that divorce is not only a way to break ties with a traitor, but also an opportunity to protect yourself and your future on the same day. "I hope and worry that if the evidence gathered is sufficient, we will immediately issue a warrant for his arrest," Rogova replied. "But we need your help. You must file for divorce and provide us with all the necessary documents confirming your property rights. This will help us prevent any attempts by Igor to seize your property." Visited a lawyer, filed for divorce, and the process began. She was devastated, but she was also determined to fight for her freedom while Mark, Igor's ex-partner, kept his word and gave investigators documents that implicated Igor in financial fraud and document forgery. These documents included fake medical certificates, copies of bank transfers to shell companies, and even drafts of an application to declare Olga incompetent. "I've been waiting for this for a long time," she said. Mark told investigator Yurigova during questioning, "Igor destroyed my business and my life. I'm glad I can help Olga restore justice." Fortunately, CCTV cameras in the restaurant captured the moment Igor added something to Olga's drink, which turned into another powerful piece of evidence against him. The following day, Igor was arrested and charged with attempted murder, fraud, and forgery. Word of Igor's arrest swiftly circulated through the city's business community. When Olga learned that Igor Otrogavoy had been arrested, the investigator called her to inform her of the news and thank her for her cooperation. "Olga Viktorovna, I can congratulate you on Igor Vladimirovich's arrest. He is currently in a pretrial detention center, and while we are still investigating, we have enough evidence to bring him to justice." Olga felt a great weight drop off her shoulders, and she sighed with relief. Triumphed after Igor's arrest, Olga felt liberated, no longer afraid, and ready to begin a new life. The divorce process was challenging and painful, but Olga persevered through it all because she knew that the law and the truth were on her side. During the trial, Olga's lawyer, a skilled and knowledgeable professional, did everything in his power to protect her interests. All of the evidence of Igor's guilt was presented, including witness testimony, medical reports, and video recordings. After the court found Igor guilty on all counts and handed down a severe sentence based on video surveillance and financial documents, Olga decided to change her life. She sold their shared apartment, which now reminded her of deceit and betrayal, and bought a small, comfortable home outside of the city, where she could enjoy peace and quiet. She also resumed her favorite pastime, painting, and started taking drawing classes. One day, while sitting in a small cafe with a view of the city, Olga reflected on her life and realized that she had gone through a difficult time, but had only grown stronger. She learned to trust her intuition, value herself, and fight for her freedom. Beautiful paintings helped her express her emotions and experiences, and she felt her soul being healed. Olga started traveling, seeing many countries, new cities, and interesting people. Olga took out her phone and dialed Svetlana's number. "This is Olga, and I wanted to thank you again for what you did for me. You saved my life," she said, referring to the day she began a new chapter in her life, the day she broke free from a toxic relationship and became a happy and independent woman. She smiled as she looked out over the city and felt like the mistress of her destiny with a new life full of opportunities and adventures waiting for her. Olga replied, "I just couldn't stay indifferent. I'm glad that everything is fine with you. I'm also very glad that maybe we will have coffee sometime with pleasure." She smiled and hung up, knowing that a lot of good things were in store for her. She was full of plans and hopes. She got up from the table and made her way to the cafe's exit, walking confidently and holding her head high.